Hey everyone, Reid Henrichs of Valley Ridge, and in today's video we're going to talk about some serious disturbing trends that have emerged in 2019 already. We're not even the second week into 2019 and the shrieking Democrats, and that's what they are, they're shrieking Democrats. They're like a teenage girl who's not allowed to go hang out with her friends on Friday night and doesn't get her way, so they shriek to their parents, but they think they're the parents. Some disturbing trends that have been happening, and just want to discuss it here, just in my thoughts. And I know a lot of you people out there feel the same way, and I know a lot of people have emailed me and reached out and contacted me to get my thoughts on this, and I'm going to give them to you. I'm going to give them to you outright and honest, and just have a little sit down chit chat here. I'm out here on my range, got my 400 yard targets behind me. I shoot 200 yards over there. This is the place I feel most relaxed on the earth because, number one, there's no better mental sport than shooting. And number two, this is where thousands of people's lives have improved for the better, being able to protect themselves. So very appropriate place to film a video of this topic. When we look at 2019, for 3 years now, we're coming into 3 years of Donald Trump's presidency, and Republicans had the House and the Senate for the first 2 years of that. Didn't do a whole lot for whatever reason. But now, for some reason, you've got these brand new Democrats that are the first term in Congress, think that they somehow have a relevant opinion on anything. And these are usually women that have a very distorted, completely ignorant view on the history of this country and what our constitutional republic is and how things actually were planned on working when the founding fathers created this republic. You've got I'm not even going to mention their names because they're going to be the stain on the toilet paper of history, when it's all said and done. But when we look at what's happening in today's world and most notably in our country here, we look at these people shrieking, wanting to tax people 70%. And I guess at this point, you've got to wonder, what percentage of being taxed do you become a slave? When do you cease being a free citizen and start into the territory of being a slave, where someone else completely owns your labor? Some would argue 1%. I would argue that. I would argue 1%, you'd be a slave. But this congressman, and I'm not going to change the gender pronouns, screw that, man. I'm tired of this PC bullcrap. This congressman wants to tax people at 70%. 70%, which means $7 out of $10 goes to the federal government, which means it gets redistributed to other citizens who didn't earn it by force. You've got another one shouting profanity-laced tirades at the executive, the commander-in-chief of the United States military and the head of state for the United States, calling him in the parlance of military terms a Mike Foxtrot. You guys can figure that out. Boy, what decorum, huh? What decorum for representatives. And the sad thing is, I'm sure their constituency is all about it. I'm sure their constituencies got the pom-poms and just cheering them right on, because that's what they voted for. That's what they voted for. But, we've got to ask ourselves a couple of questions here. At what point do we just disregard representatives altogether? At what point do we realize that they're being paid with our tax dollars to take away our freedoms and liberties? And we've got to ask that important question. At what point do they become truly, and I don't just mean this dismissively or flippantly, at what point do they become irrelevant? And at what point do they become illegitimate? I would say any lawmaker that proposes laws that violate the Constitution and individual liberty becomes illegitimate, because just today you have a senator, and I use that term loosely, Dianne Feinstein, who's been there forever, almost as long as I've been alive, in Washington, D.C., railing against firearms, and then she herself carries one. She's protected by people that have the very guns that she wants to ban and take out of your hands. So she's not against guns, she's against you having them. So just literally today or yesterday, this old woman reintroduces an assault weapons ban. But this time it's better, she says. It's better than the one she introduced in 1994. So we have to ask ourselves, at what point do these people become illegitimate? At what point do we just disregard them and live our lives the same way that we're going to do it? I guess this video is also about law enforcement and government officials and military members as well. You know, I'm former law enforcement, former Marine, and during those times, I didn't violate anybody's constitutional rights. I can't tell you how many times that I had contact with people with firearms in Illinois, concealed firearms, and I didn't arrest them. I told them to be careful and get on their way back home to wherever it was they're going, in different states or even within the state themselves. And you got to wonder, police out there, like you guys out there that are violating people's rights regarding the Second Amendment, trying to put people in jail for owning firearms. I'm going to ask you a pointed question. Why did you become law enforcement in the first place? Was it for power? Control? Was it to uphold the agenda of the state? Because, you know, if you're violating the Second Amendment, that's exactly what you're doing. I can't explain to you how immoral that is, and I can't explain to you how much a part of the mechanism and the machinery of the state that you actually are. And excuse the language, but I piss on you. You know, I don't respect you if you're that kind of police officer that does that, and you're most certainly not welcome here. So, you know, if you're one of these police officers that just violates people's Second Amendment rights because you're just enforcing the law, no, you took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. People carrying firearms are not enemies of the state. The only enemies of the state that I know are people that are passing unjust laws that violate the Constitution. Those people are enemies of the state, which would be the majority of Congress and the Senate right now. So, you know, it's out here in 2019, you know, every day we get bombarded with all this stuff, and I just got a question, you know, how many federal lawmakers have actually gone into people's homes and taken away their guns? They never have. A congressional representative doesn't do that. A senator doesn't do that. A Supreme Court justice doesn't do that. The president doesn't do that. They have to send their minions. A judge, hell, a judge hasn't gone to somebody's house and taken away their firearm. It requires force. It requires machinery in place, such as human beings, that go in and violate other people's rights. That's what it requires. So for all you people that do that, and for all you people that would even consider doing that, like, you need to do some serious soul searching, and you need to realize that you are the problem. You're the problem. You are the teeth of a rabid beast that's grown so much in 230 plus years that it's disgusting. You know, this country is not recognizable. This would not be recognizable to our founding fathers. This country is so bloated with federal bureaucracy. Like, I saw a headline the other day that said, hundreds of thousands of federal employees not being paid. Like, the part that disturbed me wasn't the fact that they weren't being paid. The fact that disturbed me was that there were hundreds of thousands of federal employees. You know, there are more employees of the federal government than there was in the entire population of the original 13 colonies. There are more employees in I'll say it again, there are more employees in the federal government than the entire population of the 13 colonies. Just a number of Orwellian magnitude that they could never have pictured. Benjamin Franklin used to say, they said, what form of government have you given us, sir, after the Constitutional Convention? And Benjamin Franklin said, a republic, if you can keep it. You know, a republic is based on the rule of law, and don't misunderstand me. That's not the rule of law that government passes laws and we have to stiff upper lip obey them as good citizens. No, no, no. Republic is based on a rule of law, and that is natural law. Right to life, right to liberty, the right to pursuit of happiness. The spirit of laws throughout the entire Enlightenment was laws that restricted the actions of government and protected and preserved the rights of the individual. That is what the spirit of laws was. This is clearly illustrated in Montesquieu's books, clearly elaborated on in all of the Enlightenment philosophers. You know, and that's largely on who our founding fathers learned from. You know, one of the best people you could ever read is Frederick Bastiat. You know, the complete opposite of what economics people profess to support now. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing to me how this Orwellian attitude has taken place. And the saddest thing about it is that it's younger children, that have bought into it. And it's also a lot of members of my generation that bought into it as well. Boomers' generation, hell, a lot of them did, And people call the World War II the greatest generation. There were a lot of great people in that generation, but that wasn't the greatest generation. That's a generation that brought you the New Deal. That's a generation that brought us all kinds of government control, gun control. The greatest generation was the revolutionary generation, the American founding fathers. That was the greatest generation. People ask, well, do you really think that they were better men than we? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do think they were better men. I think they were smarter. I think they were well read in history, much better read in general than people today. I think they understood human nature. I think that they understood the price of freedom, given that they fought for 8 years on a battlefield. 2 of which were my direct great-grandfathers to the 7th generation. They fought and bled for this country and for individual rights and freedom. They fought and bled against gun control and taxation. And now the 2 big platforms of the Democrat Party is higher taxes and gun control. The very things that brought the American Revolution into existence. So I guess the point of this video is some soul searching for this year and some inner reflection on what's going on. If you watch the news every day, man, it'll depress you. But at the same time, if you ignore it, it's not very vigilant. They say the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and we got to maintain vigilance because there's going to be plenty of people that are going to try to take your rights away. And there's going to be plenty of people that were elected by some horrible inner city hellhole that are going to put representatives in Congress that are going to try to tell people like you and me how to live. I don't think so. I'm not going to acquiesce to those stupid laws. And I'll tell you something else. American patriots, people that support and defend the Constitution, people that believe in individual liberty and freedom, we've been patient for a really long time. And, I'm all about reason and rational thinking and being able to look at things. But how can you be reasonable and rational with people that want to take away your God-given rights? How can you be reasonable and irrational with people that want to strip away your rights that you're guaranteed under our Republican form of government? How can you sit down and have a dialogue? The dialogue ended when when our ancestors gave up a lot of rights. 1934, 1968, 1986, 1990, 1994, and on and on and on we go. All these other states, places like Virginia, places that were bastions of constitutional origination. Talking about gun control, you got to be out of your mind. That's 5 minutes. If I walk 5 minutes that way, I'm in Virginia. And I'm a felon with the same firearms that I have right here in Tennessee. I may do a video where I go from one side of the border to the other. Free felon, free felon, free felon. And Governor Northam, if you can hear me, I hope that you have a special spot in hell reserved for your soul, because people like you, there's plenty of space down there for them. So ladies and gentlemen, just my thoughts. If you're like me, you sit back and maybe reflect on the situation and you wonder what's happening in our country. And I guess moving forward, what can we do? Well, number one, how much do you value freedom? How much do you value your Second Amendment? If you value those things a great deal, you'll sacrifice for them. You'll write letters to your representatives. You'll participate in rallies. You'll participate in town hall meetings. You'll participate and you'll protect other citizens when their rights are violated. You'll come out, you'll be prepared. You'll know how to use your firearms in the event that you ever have to do so against violent criminals at both the private and governmental level. Because there are violent criminals in government. Let's be real. There's violent criminals in government that use firearms to terrorize people every day in this country. It's not a pleasant thought, but it's true. People will say, oh, although most police officers are good. I would say, yeah, a majority of police officers are good, but what does good mean? Good to me means that they respect the Constitution. Good to me means that they're not writing stupid tickets for citations at some ordinance level. I used to work with a guy, and every time before he would go on shift, this is what he would say: time to go out and ruin someone's day. And you know who you are if you're watching this video. He literally said that. Time to go out and ruin someone's day. And I was appalled because, as a new police officer, I kind of looked at that. I was like, we're not supposed to ruin people's day. But that's his attitude. He'd been there for 13 years. He'd been there for 13 years. Hopefully he's retired now, or hopefully, hell, he's in jail. I don't know. I know he had several pending investigations, but anyway. So yeah, we got to recognize what the danger is. I'm not afraid of a danger outside of our country's borders at all. I don't think any army from overseas can come here and overtake the United States. There's no way in hell that it could ever happen. But what I am worried about is the army inside of the United States. And I'm not talking about the United States Army. I'm talking about the army of federal bureaucrats and state government representatives that like to infringe on our rights. They're the biggest threat, I believe. I believe they're the greatest threat to our freedom and our pursuit of happiness and our lives in many cases. Just remember that on April 15th, when you write your income, that 50% of American public that actually does pay taxes, remember that. The productive citizens, the ones that actually go to work every day for their family and for their kids, for their fellow human beings. I want you to remember that on April 15th, and I want you to remember why our founding fathers fought the American Revolution to begin with. And in many ways, John Adams said that the American Revolution can never be over because it's in the hearts and the minds of people. It's an idea. And he said one thing, you know, in one of his letters, and I'll close the video with this quote, and I hope that you reflect on this weekend. He said, "Oh, posterity, you'll never know how much it costs this current generation to earn your freedom. I hope you'll make good use of it. For if you do not, I shall repent in heaven that I ever took half the pains to preserve it." So we have to make good use of that freedom, because those men did it. And good use of that freedom means never backing down from tyranny. Don't get shouted down by a bunch of rabble. Don't get shouted down by a bunch of uneducated, ill-informed, emotional, little teenage-minded individuals that somehow have an adult body. Go on out, train. Buy firearms, learn how to use them. That's the teeth of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. That's what's going to preserve it. That's what our founding fathers believed. That's what I believe. And I believe that a trained, well-armed citizenry can never be conquered from tyrannical forces. It never has and it never will. My opinion is this, that if you are a person that has it in your heart and your mind that you're going to be free, you'll stay free. But it takes a lot of work to maintain that. And the older that I get, the more I realize that the people that want to take away your firearms, that want to take away your rights, are the most cowardly people of all. They're brave in groups. One-on-one, they're cowards. They're the people that were bullied their whole life. They're the people that were always told how smart they were and how much better they were than everybody else. Until they're shown different. Until they're shown otherwise. Then they're not so tough and big and bad. They're the petulant little child they've always been, whining in the grocery store for a little lollipop that their parents refused to buy for them. When I look at these shrieking women, Democrats, I look at petulant little children that were never told no. Well, I'm telling you no. This is Reid Henrichs of Valor Ridge reminding you, the lessons that we learn are written on the tombstones of others. We'll see you on the ridge.